Okay, let's just start our call today. And there are a few tickets like under the code reviews columns, and I will go through those after Win joins the call. And there are quite a few tickets in the in progress status, and I think quite a few of them are kind of related to the provider issues that Shweta and I discussed yesterday, and how to handle that. Shweta, do you want just maybe briefly describe what the problem is with the issue that we encounter when testing with the provider?
Sure, Ada.
Uh-huh.
So this is with regard to mUzima 231, where the reason this JIRA was filed was because on each of our mUzima forms, we actually have a field which has the provider name and ID. And every time, I think over time we realize that each time there's a new provider that is added to the system or a provider leaves the system, we have to constantly keep the forms up to date. So this is a lot of work. To prevent that, we kind of added this feature where during the wizard setup process in mUzima, we give the user to download an option to add to the device, and the form itself, actually the existing form already has provider names and IDs hard coded into it. So these providers are downloaded during the wizard process, and after that, at any point, if the user chooses to add new providers, either through the wizard process or through the settings page, we have an option where you can go and say I want to add a new provider, just like how we add concepts now. The same way we adopted the same workflow and methodology to add providers to the system as well. So given this scenario, we are able to add providers dynamically to the device, and after that, whenever you open up a form, the select list which contains the providers in will basically show all the providers that you have downloaded. So with this fix, forms never have to be modified because you only download those that are hard coded and the extra ones which the user wants to add. The problem now is the provider table, from where we're actually getting the provider details, actually has two fields through which we can actually download the provider to the device. Either we use the identifier, which is the system ID, or we use the person ID. So we are not sure at this point like which is the correct one to use, because as Ada pointed out yesterday on a call, that a lot of the providers do not have the system ID set. So we were just thinking of a workaround of how to use this. I mean, how to overcome the situation. And Ada, I also checked with Vikas about using the UUID instead of the system ID.
Uh-huh.
Right now, all the forms already have the system ID of the provider that is hard coded.
Okay.
That's the existing behavior of the form is that. So if we have to actually change all of the forms, right now it's a very simple thing. It's like 34-9 or like some 42-2 or something like that. That's the ID that we're using. I don't know if you remember, like when I had to add a couple of new providers, you sent me provider ID and name.
Yes.
Yeah, so the value that we're using is the identifier, which is the system ID. And if we decide to use a UUID, it will be different for every system out there, and it's a very big number, and it looked really ugly in a form.
Yeah. So I can you guys see the screen? How the provider table looks like in the database. I think I just want to point out that what I should point out is that in the past, we used the system ID from the user table, and for all those users that who has a encounter um, um, as a provider in the encounter table, by default, I think they convert and create those entry for those user in the provider table and grab the system ID and put in the identifier field here. However, for this column here, and however for those provided we added through the UI manually, the identifier field is not required, and if let's say the system in team, when they add a new provider through the UI without entering the system ID as the identifier field, you can see here that it would be no. Because for that reason, it creates some data issue when we use the same logic and workflow that we've been using for how we can recognize what information we use to recognize, identify a provider in our device, because as Frida pointed out, we use the system ID. If for cases like this, let's say that this provider ID 789 and 7, 8, or 9, because they don't have to add any system ID input for the identifier field, it caused the problem that for one of the tickets, when I do the testing, I cannot set that provider as the default encounter provider, because that field is simply no, so it cannot be recognized. That's how we figured out what the problem was. It took a bit time for us to really figure that out, because we have different assumptions, and then that is the reason that we want to talk about how we best to solve this problem today. I hope it makes sense for you guys that what the problem is.
Would it help if we showed them how we are actually adding the provider, and how the UI, maybe if we show them that step, that we forgot to put in the system ID, and that's when it became null here, and but I'm not sure how to get around the problem.
Yeah, so let's say that, can you guys see the screen? The web app?
We can still see your MySQL, the
Okay.
database. Yeah.
Okay, let me just stop sharing that. Sorry.
Hey, I'm just going to just grab my charger, and I'll just be back in a minute.
Okay. So can you guys see the web app now? So,
Yes.
okay, cool. So what we talk about is that in the past, so what we do is that we go to the user management page, and then we add. I'm just making it up. Nurse. Let's say that. Even we said. Even we say that, we check here, John Nurse is a provider role, but it no longer works, because it just this in 1.9 they just use these roles here for more like administrative purpose, not necessarily as an encounter provider. So even I save here, I just simply create a user for administrative purpose. I'm just that's off memory, so it's not even working. So pretty much just say that I just simply create a user. That's it. And then if we go to the in order for us to make sure like the users actually listed as the encounter provider, we need to go to the manage providers here. You can say app provider. And on this UI, you see this field here, identifier. This is not required. And I can simply search, anyone here. Did I say that nurse? So I say that nurse Betty. I say that. If I don't add anything there, let me start, because I think I already assigned nurse Betty as the provider. There, nice. Let me see here. Oh, okay, so good.
Ada, we should have removed Big Bird. It was really funny there.
So it's okay. So let's say that I add nurse Betty here as the provider. If I leave this field blank, it still let me to add it. So you can see nurse Betty is here, but without the identifier field. So that is the problem that we're talking about when we do the testing. So
Yeah.
and then when we download this whole list, we download the and even nurse Betty, we download to the device, but since it doesn't have the identifier field information there, and when we use it for set it as the defaulted encounter provider, or we were not able to grab that nurse Betty information and then put it into the form as the encounter provider because of the missing information.
Yeah. I feel the UI should have, if you go back to add provider, it should have said identifier and person name. They have or provider, right? Or provider name, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wish they had an and somewhere which says you
Yeah,
have to
I don't even know
add.
what this provider name is for.
Yeah, I'm
It's not
not
going
sure.
to put anything.
Oh, great, Win is here.
Yeah, maybe Win can help us. Hey, Win, we are still we go back to the similar issue that we talked about the new provider table in 1.9. We thought that we got it resolved, but then actually it still creates some problems in terms of for a couple tickets that require to download the provider's information into local repo and then use it to set it to the default provider and kind of provider for the form templates and things like that. The reason is that this UI doesn't require us to enter to include the identifying information here. So because of this reason, and the way that Vicus, identify the providers is required the information. Without that, even though you download in the local repo, because the field is no, you cannot grab it to the form template. So we are talking about what are the options that we need, and what options we have, how to handle this situation. So one option is to grab the UUID from the provider table. But it's a very long string, and plus, for all those form templates, we hard code the provider name and system ID. So we're trying to brainstorm what options we have and which routes, which one is better. So, do you have any thoughts or suggestions?
Can we try to look at what the REST call look like?
Did you look at that yesterday? Did you get a chance? Or
The REST call.
yeah, when can you?
1 second.
Give me a second. Let me
Okay,
look it up.
Simon, does it make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm getting the point.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because okay, there's no way on the OpenMRS to make sure that users provide the identifiers by registering providers. So I think that is the reason.
You know, the ideal scenario, how I see it is that instead of like going through this provider management page, over here, I would like to have like another option say that, oh, add this to the provider table or something like that. So that by doing that, we will grab the assigned system ID and then insert an entry in the provider table. And instead of like doing two-step, Shweta, do you want to show your screen? Do you want me to stop?
Yeah, sure.
Is it this one?
Not sure what just happened. Can you guys see my screen or it's just weird?
Oh, it looks like art.
There are lots of frames, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. Okay. Are we trying to look at what the REST call looks like? Is that what you're trying to see?
Wayne? Oh, I think Wayne want to share his.
Oh,
Okay, you can see Win's screen.
Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
If you look at the REST call to get the provider, so I think this is the identifier that we want to use.
Yeah, it looks like that's the system ID. Am I right?
Um, I don't think this is. I think this is user entered information. Because if you look at the UI, So you need to enter the whatever identifier you want to assign, and then you pick the person.
Right. So in the example that you 2, 3, okay, let's just pick Doreen, which is 3419-9. So we just,
With this one.
yeah.
Okay.
But in the table, this is the system ID.
Inside OpenMRS table.
Yes, in the provider table. And like Ada was showing, at the time of saving, like you mentioned, it's user entered. If someone leaves that identifier field blank and just saves by just giving a name, it still saves and that value becomes null. The identifier is saved as null in the table.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Shweta.
yeah, so because of this and the way we've kind of because this is the same number that's been hard coded in all the forms in all of the HTML forms against the provider name. There's a provider ID and there's a provider name, and this is the value that we see in the forms, and this is the value that we're using to check if this person has provider rights on the server. But while we're storing it manually, if we forget to punch these values in, it's a null. So we will not get this information for providers, even though it looks like the person has added or given provider access to a particular user, it won't download it because it's a null. The system ID is a null. So we were just wondering, like, how do we get around this? Because like Ada was saying that there are lots of providers where we don't set the identifier.
Yeah, I think I mentioned about this in our previous meeting about this provider. So for the provider that already exists in 1.8, I think OpenMRS migrate those provider information. Those that become problematic will be new provider that you add into the system. So AMPAT need to come up with their SOP to come up with this identifier information for the provider.
Okay.
I think. I don't know.
So
Even I don't know.
yeah, so I really don't like this UI when like one for one reason because it's not required. Another reason is that it allow user to enter anything. You know, it could be totally different from what the system ID is supposed to be.
Yeah, we talk about this with Wycliffe. I mean, we know the UI is going to be bad, and until OpenMRS can release something, AMPAT need to come up with their SOP to add new provider. Otherwise, I mean, there is nothing else you can do.
So I think it also has some problem that um, when we hard code some of the provider on the form, we use the system ID, and then the new ones when they do the auto-generated UID is different for the identifier field here, so they don't really match. There's another problem.
Hold on, I'm querying the database. So are you saying about this identifier?
Yes, when that's the column that we're using right now to pull data to check on the server. But in certain cases, it seems to be null.
Yeah.
So we're not sure what to do in cases like that. And
Um,
since this is the value that we're using given hard-coded on the form, we kind of use the same one.
is it possible to filter out those are null?
We have a check. We have a check right now. If it returns null, we just don't show that value. But then it's misleading to the user, like Ada pointed out when she was testing yesterday. She basically created a new user and gave this user provider access through the add provider feature UI in the UI. And then she tried to go on the mUzima app and she tried to download this person as a provider, but it didn't show up in the search because obviously the search API, because even though we had the identifier, it wasn't finding it in the provider table because the identifier value is null. So it would never show that option, and because of that, she was not able to check that person as a default. And I mean that's a secondary thing, but it just won't bring you that information because this value is null. So the person is left wondering, like, I just gave this person provider role or provider access. Why am I not able to download this provider onto my device?
So what if we use the UUID? What was the issue? What if we on the UI we give the option because
So I think the simple way actually is to use the UID for the provider table, but it's just very long string, and it's going to require to update all the hard-coded system ID on the existing form. I think that's the only drawback.
Yeah.
But I think from moving forward, it's just easy so that we don't have to deal with the implementation specific challenges if you use UUID instead of because the identifier is not required.
Yeah, I think if possible, we need to download the provider structure for the person if available, or the name, because if the provider is not attached to a person, then you need to enter the name of the provider, and then get the identifier information, but when a user select a provider, what actually gets entered into the form data is the UUID of the provider. But you display the selection when the autocomplete will be based on the name of the person or the name of the provider. How about that?
Is this what you're expecting it to change into? Because I think right now we're using the identifier column on the form, right? I'm confused about, is this expected behavior or existing behavior?
We changed the behavior of the form, Sweta.
You want to change it to use the UUID. Okay.
Yeah, internally we use the UUID, but for display in the form we use provider name from this one or from the person name.
Okay. And what about the provider ID?
You mean identifier?
Yes.
I think if it's available, we can display it as extra information. Otherwise, we don't display it. So probably the display is gonna look like um, provider name dash or optional dash identifier.
Right.
And this one is going to be in the selection of the form. But when the user select it, then we use the UUID information um, of the provider. But this would require us to change the processor as well then.
Yeah, and we have to change all of the forms and get
Yeah.
all of the details for all of the mUzima forms as well as LARC.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really big change, so I don't know.
Yeah. But I don't know if we have other option because the identifier could be null and then the person can be null as well.
Your person can be no as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the name can be null. The only non-nullable is the UID.
So, just a question, Ada. I'm sure you won't like what I'm suggesting, but I don't know how we can actually ask for a change in OpenMRS. But is
Mm-hmm.
there any way that we can, because right now the way, if we make this change, it's going to touch a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering, like, is there any way that we can make the UI explicit and say that you need to add an identifier as well as a person name?
Yeah, I try to argue with them as well. So I can discuss and argue and debate whatever the word. The reason they make it not required for like different scenario, they want it to be more flexible. So what happened is that let's say um, they might not have the information about a provider, so they did not create a person record, but they simply need to have some kind of quickly to create a provider, let's say that. So they simply just to enter a provider name, and then that's why it doesn't have the identifier fill out, and that it doesn't have the person ID, since we simply did not create a person record. And so that they can quickly move forward and deploy for deployment, let's say that. So that's one of the reasons they justify why they do it that way. They understand our reasoning, and they don't want to make it so strict that only fit our use case, but is not flexible enough for their use cases.
Right.
Yes, so that's the reason they, for me it's like, oh, this is shocking. But then after they explain to me and I understand why they do it that way, but it create a lot of
Yeah.
data quality issues for us.
Right. So let's say even if we're talking about that emergency situation of, for example, like a few months back, we added some extra providers based on the healthcare centers for the LARC forms. So I think there was a set of provider details that was provided, which is the identifier and the provider name, right? So even if they do add a provider in an emergency situation and they don't have an identifier set against it, how are we going to ever use it in the form? Because all of our forms are looking for the identifier field.
Yeah, I think what they intend is like they moved to use the UUID pretty much for everything, even concepts. Forms, I think this case is the same, provided they use the UUID to add. That's how they use it now.
Okay.
So they pretty much like UUID everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're following that trend, then it would be like every time a new provider is added,
Mm-hmm.
we first of all have to change all the existing
Yeah,
forms
it's a
so
massive
that we,
change.
yeah. So, and we have to find out what the correct UUID is for each of the providers
Yeah, and
and
also
modify all.
the processor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Ada
And
discussed
all,
about this with that, and I think if we're waiting for
I'm sorry, I just got here one second.
uh,
Sorry, can you please repeat that?
yeah, I think Ada talked with Wycliffe about this issue a
Mm-hmm.
couple of weeks ago, I think, and if we're waiting for OpenMS, it's usually going to take a while to
Mm-hmm.
get the changes in place.
Right. So I think mUzima 127 is almost 8 months old now, and it's just gone back and forth, and it's just a lot of new changes. Is there any way that we can close this ticket and saying that if you test it this way, if you have an identifier and a name and all of these things set, then 231 and 127 will work. But this is a new case. No, it's not a new case, but it's a change in OpenMRS which is causing us to change mUzima. So I feel maybe we should open a new ticket because there's so much history with these two tickets that it's getting hard to distinguish why certain changes were made.
Yeah, I agree with
Just
you.
a suggestion.
Yeah, it's become very complicated and long, and it's like almost a year, and then we
Yeah,
still.
and because I'm picking it up from Vikas, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know why. Because I think he has a lot of context around both of these provider related tickets, but I'm still like finding out
I
why
think we
things.
can just post like a comment saying that it works except for this condition, and then we will follow up on new tickets maybe.
Yeah, I think that would be a much cleaner way to handle
Yeah,
it for me.
I agree because it make it so muddy now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Simon, I wonder if you can bring this to discuss with the developers team in Empath,
Let me try that.
and just to let them know what the situations is and what our challenges are. And I think it'll be good to be included in the next Wednesday the Empath developer call.
Oh, yeah,
Um, can you help us to lead on this one?
yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just write some background information just to describe, what's going on and why is a blocker for us, and throw in a few suggestions, like proposed solutions, and then to see whether on the empath level they can do something maybe to clean the data, or just run an update SQL, and just grab all the system ID and then update on the identified column. That would be the cleanest way for us, and also disable the UI of for the app provider page, or make the identifier field as lookup to the system ID. And then another suggestion is on the user management page to add an option say that whether this is going to be added to the provider table. If yes, it would ingest the system ID into the identifier. I think if AMP can do that for us, there's not much changes for us. But then, at the same time, I think we need to prepare that how we should utilize the UUID moving forward, and then so it would be something we can deal with it a little bit later instead of like immediate for all these massive changes.
Yeah. So I will do the mail and then I see so we can follow this up.
Okay, great. Yeah. I think that would be helpful that you explain to them. I think it's just easier for you to explain to them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then I can join the dev call as well on Wednesday. Would that be okay? Would everyone agree with this arrangement? So we would put the current outstanding tickets close, and then just put common with some exceptions. And on our roadmap, we need to keep in mind that maybe we need to do some changes of using UID instead of identifier.
Yeah.
At the same time, Simon will help us to discuss with the MPAP team just for the MPAP implementation issues.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But, just another thought here. I think the direction they're going in, the UUID thing, is definitely the way that we should also be taking. But it's just that it's such a big change for us.
Yes.
I think for now, a simple and not invasive way of fixing it is probably just fixing the UI and saying use it this way for now. But I think the push to use UUID is
the way to go.
good for it. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
But it's such a massive change, and we have to test really heavily after that.
Yeah, plus we have so many upcoming tasks that we need to, deliverables that we need to work on, and I'm not sure we can have that much energy to spend on this massive change.
Right. Because I feel like if we're seeing this shift to using UUID coming in so many places across the app, I don't know if we may end up in a situation where it's going to be like we're running against the clock trying to move everything to UUID one day, and that's a scary. For me, that would be a very scary situation.
It's scary, yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard to develop the form with all this UUID. Yeah.
Yes. So that's. Well, I guess we just wait for what you and Simon discuss and come up with, and then we'll see what's the best way.
I think for MPAP change would be much less massive. It's quite doable. It's just on the mUzima side, like I think this is something that we need to consider, put on the roadmap. Maybe need to discuss further because it requires a lot of changes for everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fun. I'm sighing in such early morning. Sweating too. So I hope it makes sense for Achana, Derek, and Stephen as well. Do you guys have any thoughts and comments?
No, I don't. I think we answered.
Right now, no, Maybe we need to go through more about it.
Okay. So Achana is pretty much very similar to, I mean, you might encounter something similar because like even you just deal with the registration form, there's a lot of UUID things, so maybe something you can think about as well when you work with Judy.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So we have 8 minutes left. Just quickly to ask everyone if there's any tickets that you need clarifications or it's not clear and things like that you want to discuss now.
Yeah. I have a small question on the forms, Ed.
Right, go ahead.
Yeah, on the new forms, that is the health center and the dispensary form. There are new patient demographics data introduced. I think the screening form has a location, village, and another one is collecting the county in which I think the part of the person address field.
Yes.
So looking at the forms, if that data will be collected, it looks more like it should be introduced on the registration form.
Yeah,
So
those. Yeah, I agree with you. Those should be collected through the registration form. It should not be collected through the encounter form.
Okay. So that means the registration form will have some changes.
So we have like one regular registration form and then one update registration form? Demographic form, sorry, update.
Yeah, we are supposed to have the update demographic form.
So the reason why I have it there is because.
So Simon, the reason I bring up the update demographic form is that because some of the clients they use the health center form, they might be already in the system. If there's a change of the demographic data, they should use the update demographic form.
Okay.
So take a look at the demographic form, whether it includes all those fields that you need for these two new forms.
Okay. So is the form in use? Because I've never seen it.
I think it's in the form bank. I don't know if it's in use or not.
Yeah, but we have it, I think.
Yeah, we have that on the form bank.
Okay.
So just take a look at that update form because what happens is like we just because people change information and then it doesn't make sense for them to fill out the registration form again. So the update form would just update the demographic data.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that helps. I will look at the update form and see whether it can.
Yeah, take a look at that to see if I think like you should do two things. Whether first of all, like whether it's working properly to change or insert new demographic data into the database. The second thing is to look at the update form. What missing field that you need, but then it's not there.
Okay, that's cool.
Awesome. And then from there, we can tell them they can remove those fields on the health center form and the dispensary form.
Okay.
Hey, Stephen, do you have you want
to?
Yeah, I think Ruth has a small concern for Derek. I think she'll take it up.
Okay, Derek, we had a concern on if the latest forms are in the AMPA test. For us to test the error resolution.
Derek, I think this is referred to the email that the CDSS team requests you to upload the mUzima form templates to the MPAP test server so that they can test out the UR error resolution.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the mail, and while I've been working on it while even this call has been going on. So I think in the next few minutes I'll give you an update.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes left. Is there any other issue needs to be clarified or discussed?
No, Ida. I just have a very quick request actually.
Okay, sure.
Because there is, I think with Vikas moving to a different place, I'm not sure what the priority is in the tickets that I need to pick up next. So I just want to make sure that I'm not spending time on something that's not really necessary. So mUzima 69, actually, like I showed you, I can't when I test on the emulator, the issue is not there. But when I test on the phone, it just the same situation that you are in. It comes up. So I'm
think
just wondering which.
Yeah. So when you look at 69, mUzima 69, existing the apps to remove the timeout counter, that one. So it works for all scenario except that when you leave the app running in the background, and then you do something else with your phone, or just leave it by itself, and then it time out, it should log out and time out silently without popping up, but it's still popping up. Is it a major issue for you?
When if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Damn it. I was on mute. Yeah, sorry. I think I'm fine with the behavior. I think. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a major blocker, and it's just we don't want to disturb people, but then I don't think it's like a blocker. So I would like to close that ticket because it's working. It just did not time out silently. That's it. And then for some users, it might be an advantage as well because they, maybe they expect something is running, downloading whatever, and then it time out. So I don't see that it's like a blocker unless you guys think so.
Yeah, I don't think so too.
Okay, so Shweta, I think I will move a few tickets on those because those are so close. It's just like minor thing, and I'm gonna move those to the next status.
Cool, Ada. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and then in terms of priority, it would be the current sprints. So it would be 269, 270, 114, 268. Yeah.
For 114, it seems to be like Vikas thinks that that's probably an issue that is happened because of some data that wasn't really right and the way the error queue was working then. But with all the changes that we made to the error queue and we fixed all these identifier things over time, maybe this is not an issue anymore. So we were just wondering if we could retest to confirm if it's still an issue, and then.
Yeah. So we'll do more testing on that. And before I forgot, I know that we're running a little bit of time. We are very excited to have the CDSS team to join us in helping with the mUzima implementations. They have been very excited and very helpful and very helpful for us when they help us to do the testing, and they also learn about the app and do a lot. They have been doing a lot of presentations on different topics and also documentation and user guide. We're very excited that they formally join us and to help with helping with different mUzima implementation projects, so that they would be the point of person and then get the feedback back to us. And they're very welcome to join us to our Monday and Friday call, as well as the daily Scrum Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I just hope that this new arrangement would make sense for everyone, and also would not be just me doing testing all the time or providing feedback all the time. they would become more active and take more active role in that aspect, and welcome them to join our team.
Cool.
Awesome. We will share some introduction email and then about everyone and then what they're responsible for. And so when the developers work on different tickets and if they have some questions and or need them to do some help, need some help, and feel free to include the implementation, the mUzima implementation coordinator with those questions and requests. And they're very one thing great with our CDSS team is that they prompts to the request and they take actions quickly, and they always act accordingly, and we're very excited for them to join our team. So welcome.
Welcome. Yay.
Yeah, I'm the happiest one. Yeah. So I think that's the updates for me. And anyone have any comments before we wrap this up?
I think we're good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye.